Well, I am very thrilled to introduce Allison Williams. Allison C. Williams is a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, is founder of Williams Law Group, a family law firm in northern New Jersey, and Law Firm Mentor, an international business coaching services, helping law firm owners to crush chaos in business and make more money. Law Firm Mentor was born out of Allison's success in business, including winning the Law Firm 500 Award, ranking among the fastest growing law firms in the nation, being named a Stevie Award finalist for Female Entrepreneur of the Year in 2017 and in 2018, and being voted as NJBIZ's top 50 women in business and designated one of the top 25 leading entrepreneurs and business owners. The motto of Law Firm Mentor is #NeverStopGrowing. As an international speaker in the field of child abuse and neglect evidence and trial practice, Ms. Williams has appeared on The Katie Couric Show and has published articles in the Huffington Post addressing issues of child maltreatment. In 2023, she co-authored the best-selling business book, Tiger Tactics, CEO Edition, From Zero to Law Firm CEO. Since 2018, she's been selected among her peers as one of the top 100 super lawyers in New Jersey, one of the top 50 women super lawyers in New Jersey, and has been voted by her clients as one of New Jersey's best lawyers for family. Please welcome Allison Williams.
Thank you. All right, everybody, how you doing? All right, let's try this again. How are you guys doing? It is always fun to talk to a room full of people after lunch. All right, so if you guys do the carb thing, because we all do the carb thing periodically, I'm going to just stay here and freeze. And you guys are probably going to freeze too, because this auditorium is absolutely icy cold. Right? All right, so we're going to be talking today about tech stack. How many of you use technology in your law firms? If anybody doesn't have their hand up, you're lying, right? Because there's no way that you can function in a law firm environment nowadays without having technology. But we're not just going to talk about what technology is, how to use it, et cetera. We're going to be talking about how to get people in your law firm to use the technology, because that's the hard part, right? You might be really interested and really excited about using technology. And then you have those people who've been practicing since the 80s, who are really competent and capable, who say, we don't need this. I want to use Microsoft Word. I want to save things on my desktop, right? So those are the folks that we love, and we got to get those folks on board. So we're going to be talking about that throughout today. Okay, so you guys already got my bio. I'm not going to subject you to hearing more about me, because you're not here to hear about me. But we are going to talk about a lot of topics that I'm sure you are here to hear about, including things like AI, right? Did any of you attend Jack's keynote this morning? Right? It was pretty awesome, wasn't it? Like, whenever I hear the keynote, I've heard iterations of the keynotes in different bits and pieces over the years, but whenever I hear it, I'm always struck by what's new from the perspective of legal. And to hear that legal is doing something innovative, like we're on the cutting edge of AI, is kind of weird, isn't it? We're never on the cutting edge of anything. We're usually the laggards. But we are using AI, and we are using AI in some pretty cool ways. So we're going to talk about how you can use it in your client interactions, in your cases, and automating things like your operations. And analytics is one of those things that most lawyers spend some time giving attention to, but probably not as much as we might like. So we're going to talk about that too. And then, of course, what we here at Law Firm Mentor help people do is to make more money through systematizing. We help you to systematize everything in your business so it runs without you. And in order for that to happen, you have to know what the numbers are in your business. So that is something that can be a lot easier now that we have technology and now that we use AI in our technology. And then finally, topic of the day, change management, right? How to get those folks that don't really believe in technology, don't really like to use it, don't know how to use it. Maybe you are one of those people, you don't have to raise your hand. We're going to help get you on board with getting your people on board. All right, so first, let's talk about all that's on the screen. Harnessing AI, automation, and analytics to maximize law firm efficiency and transform your current systems. In other words, how to use AI in a way that makes sense for your company and that can save you a lot of money and also save you a lot of time. So the future of law is the tech-savvy law firm. If you own a law firm and you are making less than $10 million, you are probably in the consideration of being a small law firm. And when you think about that from a logistics standpoint, that probably presents unique challenges that we can all identify, right? We can all say we can't outspend big law in our PR or in our marketing. But there are some things that we have an advantage in, and being nimble is one of those things. Being able to use technology and AI in a way that can get us a faster result, a better result, and make us more profit more quickly is something that we have an advantage at. Because big law has a whole lot of laggards in the legal profession and a whole lot of folks that are afraid of technology, and we have the cutting edge advantage of being able to hire around those folks as well as get those folks on board more quickly. So we have seen a rise of technology in law firms, and we've also seen an evolution of legal tech over the past decade. Nowadays, as I asked earlier, how many of you use legal tech? Nobody would say they don't use legal tech, right? There's not a single person in the room. But there probably are some of you that would think, legal tech is not something that I prefer to spend my time on. It's not something that's easy for me. I do what I have to do. And that has a benefit, but there are also some things I want you to think about. So as we go through today's presentation, I'm going to be giving you some action items, some questions, some things to think about, because my goal for every presentation I give is that somebody walk away with something to do. So that means I'm going to be checking in with you throughout the program to ask, did you learn something? Is there something you could use? Is there something of value here? And if you guys say no, I'm going to feel really bad. Okay? All right, so first up, I want you to reflect on an area of your firm that could benefit from technology. Just give that some thought, right? Maybe you have really good people in your firm, but maybe they are doing things the old-fashioned way, right? Maybe everything is handwritten instead of typed. You could be really, really far behind if that's who you are, right? Or maybe you have a law firm where you're using marketing, but the only type of marketing you're doing is client referrals or referrals from other attorneys. Maybe you have a law firm where you are tracking customer service by asking your clients if they're happy, and if they don't say no, you're like, great, I know I have happy clients. But maybe there are ways that you could be more digitized in doing that. But just think about your firm right now, whatever its structure, whatever its size, whatever its practice area, doesn't matter, and think about how you might be able to advance the cause of your firm through technology. All right, let's talk about embracing modernization. Now, the competitive advantage does tend to come to those who adopt tech early on, right? Those of us that have seen the boom, right? Those of us that have been around for any length of time, let's say 10 years practicing, you have seen a dramatic shift in a whole lot of areas that you might not have given thought to. Once upon a time, Amazon only sold books. That's kind of freaky when you think about it now. I get everything off of Amazon. Groceries, right? Shoes. I forgot to pack certain things. Those things were shipped to me just yesterday from Amazon, right? So, I mean, when we think about that, we get a lot of advantages from being on the starting point of technology. And when we are on the starting point of technology, when we are the early adopters, we get to figure out the kinks while everybody else is still thinking, oh, that's stupid, whatnot. And you might say, I don't want to be kinky in my law firm, right? You might say, I don't want to be on the cutting edge. I want to wait until it's all figured out. The problem with that line of thinking is, if you wait until it's all figured out, you are probably going to start learning where other people have already advanced in your learning. It's kind of like coming into first grade when everybody else is already in sixth grade. Right? They had to go through learning their colors before they could learn how to put those into artwork. They had to learn their numbers before they could do mathematics. And this is the same thing. So you have to think about it from the perspective of, what do I get out of learning this now instead of learning it later? And we now have a global trend toward digital transformation in the law. You know, here at Law Firm Mentor, we have clients on multiple continents, and we have many clients who, for the first time, are able to access services in the United States. whereas they wouldn't have otherwise been able to because of the time zone, because of the physical travel requirement, but because digital has become the new way of doing a lot of things, we are able to service people around the world in a way we weren't ever able to before. So I want you to think about this. You know, we all went through the fun that was COVID, right? And we all went through that period of time where you were either told to shelter in place or heard about other states that were requiring that. How many of you then started having hearings on Zoom or some form of technological platform? Okay, I see some hands going up, right? And many people decided they were going to create a virtual law firm as a result of that. Just think about if you were one of those people who said, hey, my clients actually like this idea of being able to access me wherever, whenever, and I can go to court from my living room, and I don't need to spend $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month, or if you were like me, $21,000 a month on rent. I could simply elect to have a virtual space, right? So people that start to embrace it early get those savings. Now, if you were one of those law firms that in 2021 decided, hey, I don't need to renew my lease because I can be virtual, and you were spending $5,000 a month on rent, you saved 60 grand in 2021, and 60 grand in 2022, and 60 grand in 2023, assuming no rent escalations. And what is the result of that? You have 180 grand now that somebody else didn't have. That could have gone into your marketing. That could have gone into hiring another person, right? So there are these benefits to that. And there are a lot of law firms that start using things like AI for that same benefit. So one of the examples that we give you is the idea that law firms using AI-driven chatbots, like Do Not Pay, have initial client inquiries automated, right? So you don't have to be one of that, what was that shocking number that Jack gave us? 60% of law firms are not responding to emails, right? How many of you were stunned to hear that statistic? Yeah, I tend to be on the Pollyanna side of, is it good or is it bad? And I was like, yeah, it's got to have gotten better. We're better since 2018. No, we weren't. Unfortunately, law firms are still at a rate of 60% not responding to their emails. But if you had a chatbot that was responding for you and could simulate a real conversation with a prospect, then the natural tendency of especially the smaller firm with fewer people and fewer resources and fewer trained professionals that are pulled in a lot of different directions, you would be able to get to more people more quickly. Now, the current landscape presents challenges and opportunities, but I want to ask you, how much time do you actually spend weekly processing in your law firm? Just give a thought to that. If you think about how you spend your time or how your team spends its time, right? Maybe it's a legal assistant or a paralegal or maybe an associate. How are your team members spending time processing in the law firm? Are you one of these firms that most of our time is spent passed along to a client, so it's either billable or it's been in legal production on a flat fee file or contingency matter? Or are you one of those law firms that spends 30 to 40% of your time pushing papers back and forth, filing documents, getting things out the door? There's only so many hours in a day, and whether you choose to work an 80-hour work week or you choose to work a 50-hour work week, the more time that you're able to spend in work that gets passed along for profit, the more you can make and the less time you have to work. That doesn't mean you might choose not to work more, but you have the option. So if you think about how much time is spent processing in a law firm, you have a lot of opportunities here. And the more opportunities that you make yourself available, make available to you and make available to your teams, the better your firm tends to operate. So we have to get into the mindset that we are here to embrace change. And our goal in embracing change is to overcome the resistance to change. So we're going to talk about that toward the end of today's presentation, but I want you to just have that in your mind when we talk about the importance of embracing change, because when you start adding up the dollars and cents that come from embracing change, what you start to see is that you have a lot more than you think you have, right? And for some of us, having just a little bit more is all that we need to get to a law firm that could be true freedom for us. Now, philosophical question. How many of you think you have achieved financial freedom in your law firm? All right, I don't see any hands, but that's probably because there are some bright lights in my face. So I'm going to imagine that some of you have an idea that you have financial freedom in your law firm. But I want to ask kind of the follow-up to that, if you don't really know what that means. How many of you think that if you stopped working for 90 days, that you would have the same amount of income for you personally coming from your law firm as you do right now? Okay, again, I'm not seeing a lot of hands. I'm going to guess that most people would say if I stopped working, I would stop making money. Ironically, I'm not in that position. If I just didn't show up to work for a year, my income would not change because I built my law firm that way. And every single person in this room that owns a law firm can build a law firm in the same way. But it does require embracing change and systematizing change so that as things change, because that is the only constant that we have in the legal landscape is change, right? Cases get published all the time. Technology changes all the time. Every single time we have the opportunity for change and somebody resists it, it slows down our ability to have a law firm that runs without us. Because that's one more person who is in the way of more profit, more time freedom, and unfortunately, greater likelihood of grievance and malpractice. The folks that do it the old way are actually more of a risk than the people that like to change things. So we're going to talk about that. Now, when we talk about embracing change, one thing that we have to think about is that we have to shift over to tech-driven services. There is a movement in the legal profession, right? And I was quite surprised to hear Jack Newton talk about this in his keynote today, but I was very heartened to hear him say that because I knew I was going to be going there. That the legal profession, I think, is finally getting the message that we are slaves to our profession and oftentimes overworked, underpaid, and exhausted. And a lot of lawyers burn out because of that. So for those of us that actually like lawyering and don't want to give it up, but hate feeling like we can't ever untether ourselves from emails, phone calls, text messages, notifications on devices, etc., we are looking for alternative solutions, and we are actually shape-shifting, which is kind of cool. So when you think about this, you have to think about the idea that there needs to be continuous learning in technology, right? We heard this morning about the also common meme that's kind of gone around social media, the lawyers that decided to ask ChatGPT to write a brief, and ChatGPT made up some cases. And then the judge said, hey, I didn't find these cases, and the lawyers then doubled down and said, oh, well, I know these cases exist. Not smart, right? That's why they got sanctioned. But here's the thing. They probably wouldn't have gotten sanctioned if they had simply checked the cases after ChatGPT gave it to them. So I think that was more a matter of arrogance and sloppy lawyering than it was AI. Because if your first-year associate were to draft a brief and you not actually read the cases, you would probably be in the same situation. But here's the thing. When firms have a problem with technology, it is often because we're resisting, and the resistance often comes from the idea that what we know is stable is something that we can rely upon, right? And stare decisis, we all remember that sexy word from law school that none of us used after law school, right? Stare decisis gave us the idea that we're going to have firmly entrenched rules in the law, and we're going to change it as we need to with the social mores of the times, right? Good old Cardozo. So we know that things are designed to change, but they're not supposed to change a whole lot. They're supposed to just move slightly forward. But the problem is technology doesn't do that. Technology skyrockets forward. So if you're going to have technology in your law firm, one of the things that you have to do is you have to build out systems to chronically update your technology. Now, a lot of tech software tools for lawyers are actually training now that when they onboard you onto a new system, that's going to be a part of their service, right? There's going to be a periodic update that comes out every so often. You're going to be getting news you can use from Clio and other platforms that are going to tell you how you need to change based on what they are learning about the technology. So you don't have to be a tech wizard. You just have to be mindful of the fact that when you add new software, you can't set it and forget it. And this is probably one of those few areas of business where you are least likely and least able to set it and forget it. So next, I want to talk a little bit about some of the advancements in legal research. Now, how many of you in this room use Westlaw? Okay. Who are the Lexis users? Okay. Do we have Fastcase? Okay. So it's probably, if I could see in the room, again, I'm a little blinded by the lights, but that's okay. I would probably say it's about a third, evenly. There are some really great tools that are coming out in our legal software now that can use AI and does use AI more efficiently than we are probably even accustomed to. So the one that most of us hear about, we all have heard about ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is one of the first, it is actually not the first, but it is one of the first tools in AI. But a lot of that same algorithmic thinking and ability to engage to train ChatGPT exists in the legal software platforms that we use. So if you use Westlaw or Lexis, you are already having access to, typically in the beta form, right now I don't believe you have to pay extra for it, but you're already getting access to these AI tools. And the time should be invested at this juncture for you to start playing with it to learn how to use it. So I want you to think about the idea that if you go in right now and you did a Boolean search, or let's start with natural language. You did a natural language search in like a Lexis tool. You could say, I want Smith versus Jones talking about updating a trademark, right? And if you were to put that in, you would get a series of cases, a series of secondary authority sources that would tell you, here's what came up with those words about this topic. AI is a little bit different. AI would give you that same thing, except AI would then be able to have a conversation with you through your typing about how you want to use it. You know, there are tools now where you can copy and paste the entirety of a brief or attach a brief and say, I want you to update the law on this topic, and I want you to argue the reverse position. Or I think it would be really helpful if you understood that in this particular scenario, our client has X and not Y. Our client wants to spend Z dollars, not A dollars. Our client is a corporation and not an individual. Give me some authority that is comparable to this case, Smith versus Jones, but that takes these factors into consideration. And then you're going to get back some gobbledygook that is probably 60% usable, and you're going to have to continue the conversation. But using AI gives you a lot more than what you would get from Google, or even what you would get from a natural word search in Lexis or Westlaw, because it tells you what it's thinking. And here's the crazy thing. AI thinks a lot better than our adversaries. I know, we probably don't like to hear that, because some of you are probably adversaries with each other in this room, right? So somebody's talking about you. But in all seriousness, AI gives us a level of thinking that integrates knowledge, right? So I know what I know, but I don't necessarily know what my adversary knows. I might know as much as he or she knows about a particular topic, but I don't know exactly what they don't. I don't know the facts. I don't know their positions. I don't know the cases that they have had experience with. I just know generally the law and the facts as they are presented to me and to her or him. So when you have AI, you have a very powerful tool that can help you here. And you can start getting predictive analyses of cases. And the beautiful thing is, for those of you, do we have personal injury attorneys in the room? Got some PI folks? All right, very few PI folks. But for the PI folks, you know that, being able to accurately predict with a certain level of precision what's going to happen in a case is really what protects you from spending years, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars preparing a case that ultimately goes to a no bill or no verdict, or a settlement that doesn't even cover your costs, right? So being able to predict what happens in a case from an AI perspective gives you a better business outcome and helps you turn away the cases that really shouldn't be taken. The other thing to consider is that as we start shifting from manual research to AI-driven research, a lot of research will ultimately be done for you. Now, this is kind of getting into the sciencey stuff, so we're not going to go too far down this rabbit hole. But I do want you to start thinking about the fact that if right now, early on in the AI journey, we have learned that AI is able to think and engage with us, have conversations with us, but yet maybe a month from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, we might get to the point where AI is able to do the thinking for us. We take in a new case, we upload the intake notes, and we can start having some predictive analyses about what would happen in a case and what types of arguments we should be making and what types of briefs we should be writing and what types of strategies we would employ. That's very powerful because, as Jack Newton mentioned this morning, I don't think that AI is going to replace lawyers. We are still going to be needed to evolve the law. However, as we are doing that, the fact that we would be able to think faster, smarter with more tools gives us a huge competitive advantage. So when you think about this from a global perspective, I want you to think about what we do in owning a law firm. We are here to serve clients, right? That's how we make money. And in serving clients, there are ways to use the technology that exists at present and in the future to be able to get to a better client experience. Because at the end of the day, there are some very mediocre lawyers that we all know who make a lot more money than we do. And I'm sure we've all had the thought at some point in time, man, John shows up to court late in a sloppy suit, rarely making good arguments, and yet his clients love him. And he's on billboards, and he's just like the toast of the town. Why is that? That's because John is probably more concerned with what clients think than what you think. John doesn't really care that you don't like his suit or that you don't like his arguments. John is concerned about the fact that his clients likes his suits and likes his arguments, right? That's how he is making money. And while we are a profession, that is our first calling, we are licensed, we have certain ethical and certain professional responsibilities, we are also in business. And as business people, we must be concerned with what our clients think, or else we are not going to be in business very long. So with that, I want you to think about how you can use AI and other forms of technology to become a better business person. Some basic things come to mind, right? So first we have efficiently handling routine queries. Why do you need to be the person to tell your client where the courthouse is? Why do you need to be the person who tells your client what a certain order means if it is a routine document that's entered at the beginning of every case? Or if you are preparing a form for that client, maybe you're drafting a will or a trust for your client, why do you need to be the person who explains what certain terms mean? You might think that that is globally a part of the advisory role of an attorney, right? I'm counseling my client, so I should be the one to say that. And there may be some truth to that, but there are a lot of things that you could help your client to become a more educated consumer of your service so that when he or she gets on the phone with you or gets in an email with you or has a simulated virtual tour with you or whatever form of advice you're giving, your client can focus on the big picture stuff that you are absolutely necessary for. And if you didn't have to outsource to a staff person all of those low-level questions, but you had some form of AI-generated communication portal for your clients to get that information, you start saving yourself significant amounts of money, right? We have already seen a huge revolution of using virtual staff offshore, right? How many of you have a VA or a legal assistant that comes from some country other than the United States, right? Quite a few. And the number of people that raise their hand, I am sure, is probably triple or quadruple that of even last year. I mean, the virtual staffing industry has exploded. But this is a form of virtual staffing that gives you something better, because this is something that you would train the same way you would train a professional. But in training your AI tool, you can start to systematize how you use the information, what you share with the person, and they can start to learn the individual client with whom they're communicating with, which is something we're going to talk about, okay? So I mentioned chatbots earlier, like Do Not Pay, but they can help with some basic legal queries. There are other tools that also can help with basic legal queries. All right. So again, I always like to ask people to do things in these works. You know, I'm up here working. I am not in my Hokas. I was wearing Hokas earlier today. Hokas are tennis shoes, for those of you that don't know. You guys are so special that I am in heels. Okay, noise. Okay, good. Noise. Noise means that the lunch rush, the lunch carbs are starting to wear off. Okay, so happy to hear that. Okay, but I want to ask you guys to give some time and thought to your client service delivery in your firm. All right, what are you doing right now to serve your clients? What are you doing right now that can make your client experience better? And think about how technology might give you some valuable assistance there. Low cost, if not free, valuable assistance there, right? So first, there are a lot of people using chatbots. You know, got chatbots on your website? Right, so somebody calls in and Atmanad, also known as Steve, for those of you that saw Horrible Bosses, you know, comes on to the little chatbot and says, "Hi, how may I help you?" "Oh, I just got accused of drunk driving. I was coming home from a party," and then they give way too much information as if there's a confidential relationship, which there isn't yet. And then the person says, "I want to schedule an appointment to meet with attorney Sheila." So what happens? Chatbot responds, right? But chatbot is probably not asking questions at this point. Chatbot is probably not saying, I need to get some information from you. Where did this happen? Is this something that happened in the state of fill in the blank state of the law firm? Is this something that you are prepared to pay a fee for representation? We do not do pro bono representation on this type of matter, right? That type of engagement could not only talk to people, but it could weed out the people that your intake professionals, or if you are in a smaller firm, your receptionist or your legal assistant, is on the phone with. Just think about getting hours back a week of someone's paid time, $30, $40, $50, $60 an hour, depending on where you are, to be able to answer these questions and weed out the people that they don't need to be talking to. Because a lot of these phone calls can take up to 30 minutes before you find out, oh, by the way, I'm in Utah and this law firm is in Kansas. Right? So now let's talk a little bit about cases, right? So AI can help us with clients, we've talked about that, but AI can also help us with case predictions. Now, case predictions become somewhat of a dicey thing because our favorite phrase as lawyers is, it depends. That's right. We all know the it depends answer. Right? I have gone on to any number of stages and said, all right, guys, tell me, do you have to spend money on marketing? It depends. How many of you think that you have to have a license to practice in a state? It depends, right? We always get that it depends answer, but in this particular instance, the it depends answer is actually an algorithmic thinking that you have trained yourself into, right? You have trained yourself into figuring out with a certain level of precision that many of you are not even aware of that we use as lawyers, where you have to think, hey, what is the judge? Who is the adversary? What are the arguments? How has the case law changed? There's a case pending right now in the Supreme Court of our state that may alter the trajectory of this particular type of case. How much money does the client have to spend? How much endurance does the client have? How is the client going to present if I have them deposed? Right? Those are things that we think about before we even get to an answer. It starts with it depends, and then we add in all that other stuff. AI has the ability to do that as well. And it uses historical data for these types of predictions. So just as you have taken all of your years of experience and you've been able to bring it forward and say, hey, I know that in this particular jurisdiction, if I go before Judge A, I'm likely to get this result, but if I go before Judge B, I'll get a different result. And I know that if I'm representing an older woman, I'm going to get a different result than if I'm representing a younger man. And I also know that depending on who my adversary is, this case will be longer and more expensive than if I have a different adversary. You take all that information and integrate. That information can be shared with your AI tool. And at some point, your AI tool can integrate that information on a case-by-case basis as you are feeding it data about new potential cases or existing cases. And that's part of the reason why starting to use it now in tools like Westlaw and Lexis and starting to play with it when it's in beta form so that you already learn how to train your AI tool helps you so that when you get to the point where the state of the art, the state of the science is better, you will already know how to train your tool quickly enough that the new information that comes in is going to be something that you can very rapidly get to an answer. Now, we also heard from Jack Newton this morning about the ethics rule that basically says you cannot take your savings and try to keep it for yourself. You must pass it along to your client. That basically means that if you're billing by the hour, you can't tell somebody this was a 5-hour brief if it normally would have been a 5-hour brief, but AI made it into a 1-hour brief, which is an interesting decision if you think about it, because there are many jurisdictions that have said that if you are billing by the hour, but you have previously communicated to your client that there will be certain flat fee expectations in the case, that is ethically appropriate. And it's not in any way inappropriate to pass that on to a client. So, for instance, you have in your agreement, your letter of engagement, 4 hours is going to be billed for every case management conference, right? Doesn't matter if you had to walk 5 minutes across the street from your office to the courthouse and 5 minutes back, and you spent 15 minutes at the courthouse, you can bill 4 hours because you told your client in advance you're going to bill 4 hours. So that same line of thinking, by the way, would apply with the rationale that was in the opinion about ethics on billing for AI, i.e., you have to tell people what you're billing them for. You can't lie and say, oh, yeah, this was really 4 hours when it was really 2. But you can use flat fee billing models in order to take advantage of the efficiencies that AI can generate for you. You just have to do it with notice and an ability for your client to understand what they're being billed for. So when we think about the case predictive, by the way, that was a low tangent. I do that sometimes. Okay. When you think about the case predictive elements of AI, one of the things I think is really important is that you can start to improve your strategy when you are using AI tools. The same way that you have the ability to say to a client, you know, this depends. You know, you're asking me a question. It depends. However, in my experience, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, let me think about it, and then you give them a recommendation, right? It's the same thing that AI would be doing. The difference is that, again, AI gets to accumulate information, right? So you get to accumulate information to a certain degree as well, right? You practice in your jurisdiction. Many of you could be transactional lawyers where you're going to encounter the same types of contracts and know whether or not those contracts are going to be held up to scrutiny and whether they're going to fall or not. And then there are others of you that are litigators, so you have people in a court system where you are going to engage, and at some point you're going to figure out, I'm likely to get a result here versus there, right? That's going to be the same. But as case law comes out, you are probably not reading and integrating into every single case that you subsequently touch, every single argument and every single decision that has ever been decided in this jurisdiction as it is being decided when you advise the next client. The next client comes in and you say, well, there was this case that was decided last week that I need to think about and integrate into my algorithm of thinking on all these other areas. AI is doing that at the speed of lightning. So now, I want to shift a little bit, and I want to talk about automation and operations. Okay. By the way, we're going to stop and pause right now, poll the audience. How many of you learned something, heard something, saw something, thought something today that you have not previously seen, heard, thought, or used? Okay. I'm getting probably about a 60% rating so far. I want a higher grade before we leave. So thank you for those of you that have your hands up. For the rest of you, we're going to get your hands up before the program ends. All right. So automation and operations. I want you to think about your administrative time, right? Administrative time is a huge suck in law firms. And one of the things that we hear a lot in the Clio Trends report is about how when they poll Clio users, when they look at how many hours are going into your average workday for a Clio user, that time is very small. Now, it has increased dramatically as a result of efficiency protocols and as a result of the way that we are learning how to practice as business people, but it is still not most of your day, especially if you are a sole owner, meaning you are the only practicing attorney in your law firm. So in those scenarios, oftentimes you are passing along administrative work to staff people, but everything can't be passed along. And because lawyers tend to be control freaks, things that can be passed along often are not passed along. So the thing that we have to think about is automation affords us the ability to pass things along with a level of confidence that we can pass it along and let it stay passed along, right? It doesn't revert back. It doesn't boomerang. So I want you to think about scheduling and billing. Now, scheduling oftentimes happens in ways that require people, right? Person calls the office, has to speak to a staff person. The staff person has to check your calendar, has to give some options to the client has to think about it. And of course, we now have seen a lot of automated scheduling. We use Calendly, we use OneHub and things like that to automate our scheduling. But I want you to think about some of the things that are maybe a little less commonly used, right? The time that it takes for you to be able to update your exhibit tabs. The time that it takes for you to be able to go into your software and change the settings so that ultimately you are shooting out Form 1 versus Form 2 when somebody comes in for a new client consult, right? Those small things that we don't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about, but they add up, right? When they start to add up, we don't usually think about that time. We just get that into what we refer to as the creep, right? So we say, okay, I'm going to come to work. I'm going to work for 8 days. From me, some of us do work for 8 days in a day. Those superhuman lawyers, right? Billing like a rock star. But we're going to work for 8 hours, and of those 8 hours, we're going to have maybe 6 of those hours be passed along to a client. That's what the plan is. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh crap, today I have to go in and like update our CRM, or oh, I forgot. I need to update this order. I'm going to meet with a vendor. The vendor is going to offer me a deal if I do some bulk purchasing of some supplies, right? Those little things start to add up. And when they add up, ultimately it takes away from that 6 hours. That 6 hours becomes 5, becomes 4, and so forth. But I want you to think about some of those types of tasks in your law firm right now. Right? Could be anything. Could be something that you would have given to a secretary. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to lawyers, right? So your time for every person that works in your business is economic time, even if that person is not a billable professional, right? So there is a return on an investment of every person that you employ in your business. And if that person is doing things that are not the highest and best use of their time, you are overspending for the task. Right? So you're overspending if a lawyer is doing a paralegal task, if a paralegal is doing a secretary task, the secretary is doing a file clerk task, if a file clerk is doing a runner's task, and so forth. Right? And a lot of that creep, the automated tasks opportunity, is significant because if you don't have the highest and best use of your time, you are being less profitable, which works at the start, because you're probably making a lot of profit because you don't have a whole lot of expenses. But as you grow, your expenses grow. So you need to be able to save time in other places. Automating your operations also gives you the benefit of improving your client management, right? We all have those clients, those special humans that we say, when this case is over, I am retiring from the practice of law. Right? We've all had them, right? Those people that go home at night with us and we say, why am I sleeping with you for free? Right? I should be billing you for all the time that you are taking up my energy. And we don't get to do that, unfortunately, but those are the people we have to work with. And those folks need management. There's a lot of client management that can happen through automating the communications with people, right? Because people come to us when they are in distress, for the most part. You know, there are some adoption attorneys in the house. Great for you guys. You get to see the happy humans. The rest of us don't get the happy humans. Right? I assure you, as a divorce attorney, I have seen 1 or 2 happy humans. They're happy on the day of divorce, usually. The rest of the time, they are something else. I won't say the something else because this is a PG show. But that something else takes up a lot of energy. And if you could educate people as to when to expect communications from you, when they are supposed to be doing things, how frequently they can be expecting to hear from you, you can take away a lot of the anxiety that causes them to harass you. It causes them to call your office 40 or 50 times a month, if not a week, right? So there are a lot of different tools that automate things like our client intake, our emails, our billing. Just imagine if you were a client and you were receiving an email every week from your lawyer that was AI generated. Because the AI tool would have learned that you're somebody that likes to get an update on certain substantive things. And as you are updating tasks in your software as the lawyer or the paralegal, you would be able to have your AI tool read those tasks and communicate a status update, or not, to your client, so that your client was hearing from you more frequently without you having to stop and generate a thought and open up an email and send the email communication and make sure you draft it in just the right particular sort of way, because some people need to hear things in just the right particular sort of way. Right? If AI could save you all of that effort, but your communications were to triple with a person, think about how much better served they would feel in the process. And in client management, this is something that I think we oftentimes don't give enough thought to. This is an area where we are actually losing time and money by not spending more time up front structuring the client relationship, right? So when we don't understand our clients, we think we understand them, right? They tell us what their problem is. We are lawyers, so we understand the legal ramifications of their problem. We kind of get the gist of what they're going to get out of the process, and we know what the process is generally going to look like, so we can share that with them. But they are overwhelmed and oftentimes not emotionally hearing what we are sharing. If we were able to distill that bite-sized information that tends to be a mountain of information into smaller pieces for them over the life of the case and reinforce it, how much more would they be able to say they understood what was happening and weren't anxious about it? How much more would you start to have high ratings from your clients if this particular client likes to get their emails at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, because that's when they go running and they read them, and this particular client only likes to receive communications at 6 o'clock at night because they've gone to work and they like to read their emails as soon as they get home so they can have all their frustration all at once, right? Work plus law, you know, you'd be able to serve an individualized experience even though you're giving the information over to a tool that is going to individualize the experience for your clients. You also have the ability to tailor things based on feedback. We all love client feedback, don't you? You're a rotten piece of blank, 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 blank. Like, we've heard that all before, right? Even when you're a really good lawyer, I'm sure you have all heard that because clients unload on us. But when they unload on us and we start hearing things like, I'm not happy about X, sometimes it is things that are within our control, right? We can't control the adversary, we can't control the judge, but we can control things like when we communicate information. We can control things like our tone. What if you were able to record the information that you're going to give to a client, and there was an AI tool that looks just like you, and is a recording that could show up on your client's email that is from you, i.e., you, the AI version, that is telling them exactly what they need to hear with a soft tone and a holding hand or whatever it is that they need? How much more value would they get out of the experience of you if they were getting you, the AI version, at 1/3 of the time expenditure that you would normally have to spend servicing your clients? How much better would your law firm be if you were not exhausted by the people that you served? All right? And I can't imagine that I'm the only person here that has ever been exhausted by the people that you serve, right? Hands up if you've ever had a client that tires you out. All right, that's where the hands are, all right? I know that the lunch carbs are starting to wear off, and so I know that we're getting there, right? Okay. So, we have all said this too before. The practice of law would be so better if we could just do it with robots, right? We wouldn't have to fire people, we wouldn't have to hire people. We could have a lot less stress if we had robots doing our work. But the beautiful thing is Legal Robot is an AI-driven platform for understanding and drafting legal documents. So in this scenario, you have the ability to actually get things prepared for you by a tool that can use your forms and your systems. You can start with where you are, and then you can carry it forward. And the beautiful thing about that is the more time and energy that you have already invested in preparing an amazing document and using it as a template, an AI tool would be able to read it, scrub it, and take it to the next level with new information, new clauses, new provisions, and customization for the circumstances of that case. Again, this is not replacing lawyering. It is supplementing. And it's supplementing with information that you would have the ability to use and give to the tool so that you would be able to feed it what it needs and then take it and work from it, right? And the beautiful thing is that since it is still your mind, your work product, the value that you're passing along to a client is still compensable value. So I say that very clearly, and I'm using these words very intentionally because what a lot of people think is, if it took a computer 2 minutes to spit out a document, how dare I charge somebody $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 for it? But here's the thing. People don't actually pay you for hours, right? The billable hour was something that clients asked for, not lawyers. And clients asked for it so they would have clarity with what they were being billed for. Because somebody would say, oh, this feels like a $10,000 case, and they'd have no conception of why that was. But now, not only are we moving ahead in the state of art of what we can do with computers, we're also moving ahead in understanding, because we're taking in a lot of client feedback, how they process information about our services. The economic value of a contract that you said was worth $10,000 does not become worth less because you spent less time on it. Because you're not charging for your time. You're charging for what they are getting from your time. That's the value that they're paying for. I don't really care whether you spent 10 minutes on my document or 2 hours on my document if at the end of the day my document is going to save me $100,000. Or my document is going to keep me out of jail. Or my document is going to make sure that my business does not become insolvent. Right? So these are opportunities that present value for both sides. A better product for the client and a compensable value for the lawyer. Now, of course, we have to attend to the rules, right? Every rule, every jurisdiction has its rules as to how you can bill, so you have to acquaint yourself with those rules. But once you acquaint yourself with those rules, AI affords you the ability to get efficient with the use of the information and passing along to get a better result for the client. And as long as you are doing that in a way that's ethical in your jurisdiction, the sky is the limit for you. So Do Not Pay is another one of those tech tools I mentioned now a few times, right? It's a chatbot, and the great thing about it is that it can help to interface about legal issues. Now, one of the things I think we have to be careful about, we talked about the idea that you have to have technology integrated, and you have to have a plan for constantly learning and updating your technology. But you have to be careful with things like this, right? Because at some point, you could get into the point where your AI tool is practicing law, and you don't want that. You do want your AI tool to assist you. You don't want your AI tool to be thought of as replacing you. So there are ways to get around this, right? But at some point, this becomes an extension of your law firm. The same way that your paralegal can give out legal information and your associates can give out legal advice, you can train tools to give out legal advice. Now, one of the things that I think we have not yet figured out as a profession, so I'll give this little caveat so we're all careful about it, is we have not yet figured out as a profession where the, quote, practice of law happening through AI is something that becomes unethical, because it is the unauthorized practice of law. The beautiful thing is, I don't think that the AI tools actually care if someone files a complaint against them saying, hey, unauthorized practice of law. But the question becomes, will that attend to a lawyer, right? Will a lawyer who delegates legal advice and communications to a chatbot be presumed to have delegated the practice of law? Now, if I'm allowed to practice law, is my chatbot? That is the question that we don't yet have a full answer to from any legal ethics opinion that I've been able to find in the country. But starting out with the rule that we must become technologically proficient, we are ethically bound to do that in every jurisdiction in which lawyers are licensed. How do we stay on the cutting edge of using new technologies while at the same time keeping abreast of our new and unfortunately ever-evolving trend of policing new technological use? And I think if you go back to the opinion we referenced earlier, the good guys in Manhattan that decided to have ChatGPT write its legal brief, I think as soon as you see that there is a problem, you pull back. You don't hit the same types of legal minefields in ethics that you would if you decided to double down and say, oh no, I know I have every right to do what I'm doing, right? So it becomes a challenging point here. But when we start getting user-friendly, accessible information for the public, that is where we ultimately do a better job serving the clients and where we tend to make more money and tend to have happier clients overall. So there's a couple other tools. I'm going to skip past these because we're running short on time. That's me and my little tangents. By the way, that's also you and your carbs, right? Because since you guys aren't talking to me that much, sometimes I talk over. Okay, just a little FYI. But a couple of important points that we're going to make sure that we cover before we wrap today. First, I want to make sure that we understand that we need to measure the efficiency and productivity and ROI of our tools. So we talked a lot today about AI, and we talked about technology, but the one thing that I really want to impress upon you that's really critical for you to understand with these new tools is that every single time you use a new tool, you need to be tracking how much money it made you, how much money it cost you, and what you got out of it, okay? Now, I start with money. For some of us, that is not the value that we're most concerned with this. For some of us, it's just the time, right? We're comfortably compensated. What we really want is the ability to leave on a Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon this minute with our families. Or we want the ability to take a 3 or 4 week vacation without being tethered to an office. Whatever your value proposition, everything has an economic cost. So we have to get our business to the point where it is making money consistently and profitably first, and then we maximize our time. So we have to recognize that we have to track everything, and in tracking everything, we have to drive performance with KPIs. And for those of you that are not familiar with that term, KPI is Key Performance Indicator. What are you doing, and how do I know that it's successful? That's the gist of it, right? So you have to review them regularly. You have to be putting down a metric that says, if I'm going to use this AI tool to draft things for me, how long does it take between programming it, uploading information into it, conversing with it back and forth? How often do I have to do this? And overall, how much time did this take for me versus what I got at the end? Now, you can't do that once and say, oh crap, I spent 15 hours on this thing. If I had just written a brief myself, it would have taken 5 hours. This was a waste of time. Because as we all have gone through a legal career, we recognize that the first time you do something, you are never going to be as good as the 15th or 20th or 75th time that you do something. So you have to give it a reasonable amount of time, but that also should be measured. And as you are measuring how long it takes, you can start assigning a value to that, right? Now, this also gives you the concept that you should be thinking about this from the perspective of not just you, but every person in your office that works on behalf of the firm. So if you have lower cost talent learning how to use the AI tools to generate information, it will cost you less. Maybe you want to have someone like an administrative assistant or paralegal learning it first. Maybe you want to have that to be the way that you save money on the cost on the front end as you start maximizing value on the back end. Because frankly, I would much rather have a 20-something learning a tech tool than me, myself, and I. But that's because I'm a little bit older than some of the folks in the room here. All right, accountability mechanisms to use tech tools. Really important that you make sure that when you put in a new technological tool in your company, that everyone recognizes that there are component pieces to getting it locked and loaded, okay? So this means you want to start setting up automation. You want to set up auto reminders, right? You want to make sure that everyone's getting status updates. This becomes a new process. You don't just throw in new technology, hope for the best, see how you like it, and if you don't like it, you stop using it. You have to give it a chance to work. And that's true of AI or any form of technology. Like if you were to use something like Monday.com, which is a task management tool, you would want to use its dashboard. You would want to start making sure that information is going in regularly. You would want to make sure that you're measuring how frequently it is being accessed by people on your team. That's how you can start to tell, okay, the way we did it before cost this much time and money, and the way we do it now costs a lot less. How much less? That's a quality of our tracking. And you want to start streamlining performance reviews with technology. Now, this is one of my personal favorites. For a lot of people, when it's time to evaluate your staff, you evaluate your staff by saying, hey, I've been doing this for a year now. How do I feel about this person, what they did last year versus what they're doing now? Great way to start the conversation, but probably not the most precise way of evaluating a person, because some people do a really great job of looking busy and seeming like they're adding a lot of value. But when you start measuring things, right, the thing that I think most of us think about is billable hours, right? You can always tell if somebody's billing their hours or not. Even then, though, some of those hours get written off, so are you tracking that? But for a lot of other tasks, a lot of non-billable professional tasks, how quantitative is your measurement tool for that person? You know, there are a lot of tech tools now that you can use to evaluate whether or not a staff person is doing what they need to be doing and if they add value for you. So I want you to think about that for things like Lattice. Lattice is actually a tool, it's an HR software that can help with things like this. And these are just, again, none of these tech tools, you know, I don't get a referral fee from any of the tech tools that are in the platform. I feel like I'm talking to a room full of lawyers, so I ought to say that, right? But these are some of the tech tools that we see most commonly across the population of my clients at Law Firm Mentor, that they are using, that are saving them time and getting them to better results, faster and more profitably. So I want to now shift and talk about change management. We got a minute and a half left, okay? So this I'm going to go by really quickly. So for those of you that have been taking pictures of the slides, good-o for you. For the rest of you, you might want to pull out your camera because we're about to rocket docket, okay? Change management is one of those things that most people don't think about until they get to a larger law firm, right? Larger law firms will actually bring in consultants that do nothing other than help people in a series of time over a series of different products with a different level of adaptation depending on which group you are in, learn technology, and there's a whole process for getting this locked and loaded in your law firm. So the gist of it, start with a roadmap. What exactly are we trying to figure out? What are the timelines for that? Next, you want to figure out where your resistance is. We all know the folks, right? We love our folks, but some of our folks are just hard-headed. They don't like to change anything. If you come in with a new colored Redwell, they are pissed the F off, right? Those are the folks that you have to identify early on and create a plan around them. And this also involves our next step, which is risk management. Now, risk management is its own full category. We could have a series of programs about that and that alone. But I want you to make sure that your plan includes strategies for managing cybersecurity risks. because this is one of those areas that is also coming out to get us as lawyers. And it costs a lot if you have a ransomware attack or if, God forbid, you had malware to destroy your systems. Next, you want to engage leadership. Who are the folks that need to be on the cutting edge of this information? You want to build a change management team, and you want to communicate early and often. Now, I say that, we're going to get to the end there. Oops, got all the way past the end here. Sorry. The last thing was thank you. I'm sure you guys read that. I'm going to wrap up by sharing with you guys that we shared a lot of information today with the idea of getting you on board with using tech tools and getting you on board with what is available to you in the wide world of technology. But the beautiful thing about all of it is that there is a system and a process for it. And if you learn the system and process, you can make yourself a lot of money, you can save yourself a lot of headaches, you can mitigate the risk of grievance and malpractice, and you can have a much better law firm. All right. Thank you, everyone.